Good morning, everybody. Happy Tuesday. We have a great show for everybody today. What do we have, Krystal?
Indeed, we do. Big news, both domestically and abroad. We now have received official word President Biden is going to be traveling to Israel and visiting with the leaders of some other countries while he is there. So we'll talk about that, as well as the continued risks of this spreading into a wider war. One of the things he is likely to be discussing is trying to open some sort of humanitarian corridor. There have been a lot of negotiations about that already, so we'll get into all of that. We also have some additional results for you from that exclusive focus group that we conducted along with JL Partners down in Georgia, in and around Atlanta. That's where the residents came from, Democratic-based voters, talking about how they feel about President Biden and his age, their concerns, and whether they would be open to other candidates. So we'll talk about that. We also have big domestic news, as I mentioned. Speaker vote happening today. Jim Jordan seems to have swayed some, but maybe not enough. So we'll see how that goes and talk about what it means. We also have some additional examples of censorship happening here. Some wild back and forth between Gigi Hadid and the State of Israel that we want to bring you. We also have a little bit of hypocrisy we want to expose with regard to how people feel about Ukraine and Russia versus Israel and Gaza. And I had a little bit of an adventure last night over on News Nation. Saagar actually hasn't seen this clip yet, so we're going to talk a little bit about this. This is why I don't do cable news anymore, bottom line.
That's why I told you privately. I'm like, why are you wasting your time with this? We'll find out. We'll find out why you don't waste your time with this. Thanks to everybody for supporting us on the focus group. We'll have more to say on that, but let's actually get to the news here. Late last night, Secretary Blinken, after a marathon, nearly 8-hour meeting privately with Prime Minister Netanyahu, made a major announcement. President Biden on Wednesday will be arriving in Israel. Here's what he had to say.
On Wednesday, President Biden will visit Israel. He's coming here at a critical moment for Israel, for the region, and for the world. And he's coming here to do the following. First, the president will reaffirm the United States' solidarity with Israel and our ironclad commitment to its security. President Biden will again make clear, as he's done unequivocally since Hamas's slaughter of more than 1,400 people, including at least 30 Americans, that Israel has the right and indeed the duty to defend its people from Hamas and other terrorists and to prevent future attacks. The President will hear from Israel what it needs to defend its people as we continue to work with Congress to meet those needs. Second, President Biden will underscore our crystal clear message to any actor, state or non-state, trying to take advantage of this crisis to attack Israel. Don't. To that end, he's deployed 2 aircraft carrier groups and other military assets to the region. Third, the president will continue to coordinate closely with our Israeli partners to secure the release of hostages taken by Hamas, including men, women, small children, Holocaust survivors, and American citizens, as an indispensable humanitarian effort. Fourth, President Biden will receive a comprehensive brief on Israel's war aims and strategy. Fifth, the president will hear from Israel how it will conduct its operations in a way that minimizes civilian casualties and enables humanitarian assistance to flow to civilians in Gaza in a way that does not benefit Hamas. To that end, today, and at our request, the United States and Israel have agreed to develop a plan that will enable humanitarian aid from donor nations and multilateral organizations to reach civilians in Gaza, and them alone, including the possibility of creating areas to help keep civilians out of harm's way.
Obviously, that's a major piece of news there. President Biden arriving. Now, we don't yet know what the circumstances of the arrival are for. Is it a show of solidarity, as the Israelis wanted him to make, or is it to solve a diplomatic knot? Also breaking last night, Israel will be the first place that he does visit, but on the same trip, we'll be traveling to Amman in Jordan, where he will meet with the Palestinian Authority, the Egyptians, and the King of Jordan. So, Krystal, what that does show us is that this is a major diplomatic visit. In tradition, the U.S. president, when he does visit Israel, is supposed to visit Egypt. Kind of interesting that he is going over to Jordan, where he will, of course, still be meeting with President Sisi. But it comes at a time of absolutely massive questions about U.S. involvement and some terrifying stuff that began happening last night. Let's put this up there on the screen. The IDF announced publicly that it was currently striking, quote, Hezbollah terrorist targets targets in Lebanon, their words, in terms of what they're saying. The reason why that is so significant is it was the first time that they have publicly come out and said that they're making strikes not only in Lebanon, but targeting and naming Hezbollah. By doing that, we know that this is entering the dangerous territory of a possible proxy war between Iran and Israel. And not even proxy, it could escalate much further, which would of course draw the United States in. It also, these airstrikes came just hours after a very ominous statement by the Iranian foreign minister. Let's go ahead and play some of this. I'm going to read a translation of what he said, which has everybody so worried. He says, quote, there will be potential preemptive action by Iran and its allies in the coming hours in the region to counter Israel's attacks. Here is exactly what he says. Resistance leaders will not allow the Zionist regime to take any action it wants in Gaza and then leave Gaza and go to other resistance spheres. He also invokes Israel's use of white phosphorus in Gaza and says that they will make a case to the Iranian public for preemptive military action. Direct quote, today, if we do not defend Gaza, tomorrow we will have to face these bombs in children's hospitals in our own city. This is a very blunt warning of war, according to the official translation. And the final quote was, quote, time for political solutions is running out. The possibility of expanding war is approaching inevitability. He also directly calls out the United States and says that they have asked for restraint and that they have been replied that they do not seek to expand the war, but that restraint is not one-sided. And specifically on Hezbollah, you cannot tell Hezbollah to restrain and then tell Netanyahu to do whatever crime that he wants. So he specifically is calling out both Israel and the United States, threatening to use Hezbollah and open a two-front war. Again, the reason why it's significant is the reason we have these two carrier strike groups in the Eastern Mediterranean is an attempt to try and deter Iranian action. Hezbollah is, several multitudes more deadly to Israelis and to the IDF. It presents an actually significant military challenge. And, Krystal, it is the most likely avenue that the United States gets involved in this war. That is the lens of which I am viewing the Biden visit.
I think that is 100% correct. The primary reason likely for his visit is to try to show solidarity with the Israelis, to try to deter Hezbollah from getting fully involved in this conflict, which looks more likely every day. I mean, that's the reason for the carrier strike group. That's the reason for, as we're about to talk about, the call up to be ready to go of several thousand Marines to the region. That is the reason why I believe he is visiting, to try to keep this from escalating into a broader war. Will it work or not is a bigger question. And, what we've seen from the Biden administration is typical Israel, we stand with you no matter what. You have our support 100%. They're trying to rush aid through. Obviously, Tony Blinken being there and his words of, I'm here as a Jew and I completely support you all. All of that is, the primary actions that they're taking and basically giving Israel carte blanche to do what they want to do in Gaza. But you are starting to see some concern about how this is all going to unfold. Concern similar to what I raised yesterday about, okay, you take out Hamas, what then? Who is going to govern? You heard Biden saying in that 60 Minutes interview that reoccupation of Gaza would be a, quote, big mistake. You also see Tony Blinken and others, at least privately, concerned that after the horror that the world saw of the Hamas terrorist attack and the incredible sympathy for the state of Israel, that could fade very quickly. Seeing these horrific pictures of Palestinians and children being killed in Gaza, that sympathies could shift very, very quickly. So that's why when Tony Blinken is announcing this visit, he leads with, we want to make it clear Israel has a right to defend herself, et cetera, et cetera. But then also on the list is, hey, we want to see about opening up this humanitarian corridor. We want to see about trying to minimize civilian casualties. Now, they have been very clear. They're not willing to condition aid on any of this. So in a lot of ways, it's just empty talk that has amounted thus far to absolutely nothing in terms of humanitarian conditions. But I do think part of why there has been this big delay in the ground invasion is exactly for this concern about trying to avoid a direct hot war with Iran or at least with Hezbollah.
I really believe this is a Gordian knot which is unsolvable. The Israelis have a way of doing war and they're not going to change it. The U.S. political system is absolutely not going to condition aid or any of that. It basically doesn't allow any option but the one that you presently see for every U.S. lawmaker, which is basically the Overton window is support Israel, rhetorically call for a two-state solution, all the way up to bomb Iran. There's nothing on the table which would constrain the number of options. And within that framework that we have right now, there's just simply no way, I've been saying this from the beginning, that Hezbollah is going to sit by and just stand while a full-blown war and actual shooting, urban conflict evolves right in Gaza. Not going to happen. Already, one journalist who I deeply trust, let's put this up there on the screen, Shashank Joshi, he's the defense editor at The Economist. He has had the best reporting that I've seen on Ukraine. He has some of the best sources in British intelligence and elsewhere. He says, quote, Iran has been pushing Hezbollah to join the war, according to at least one informed account that I have heard. And I take that with very seriously because there has been two different ways that we could view it. Hezbollah itself could view its role as having to insert itself, or Iran also could be the one trying to constrain it. To have the primary backer of the group allegedly, or in this case reportedly, wanting them to join the conflict, that's a whole other level of insertion. You have the leader of Hezbollah. They put out a statement yesterday that the time is nearing about some major attack. The Iranian foreign minister's language was very ominous, saying preemptive strike may need to occur. And then when we couple that, Krystal, with the airstrike itself, airstrikes by the Israelis did not happen as a result of a rocket attack. It was directly after this Iranian foreign minister, meaning that it was at least, quote, preemptive in the view of the Israelis trying to take out infrastructure. Now, you don't preemptively bomb something unless you think it's about to be used against you. So maybe the Israelis themselves have intelligence. All of this on the backdrop is America and its carrier strike groups, as I mentioned. We can put this up there on the screen. Increasing reporting also here in Washington. The U.S. and Israel are focusing on Hezbollah's next move after the Hamas attack. Quote, American officials said they believe the deployment of aircraft carrier strike groups has, at least for now, deterred Hezbollah from opening a new front in the war. Now, maybe you should be comforted by that if you're Israeli. If you're America, what you should read there is that our firepower is the only thing standing in the way of a two-front war and a possible global conflagration. And also, it's not even doing a particularly good job of it because we still could be in it right now.
Yeah.
How can you not read that as the U.S. military is effectively trying to backstop this, and that we are almost 100% going to get involved? And the best way to always look at it is, do we have troops there or not? And already, just last night, let's put this up there on the screen, we have 2,000 U.S. Marines and sailors that will, quote, join a growing number of U.S. warships and will converge on Israel as the U.S. seeks to send a message, quote, of deterrence to Iran and prevent the war in Gaza. Once you actually see a U.S. Marine Rapid Response Force, which is what they are designed for, and they are designed to fight and to kill, then we know exactly what the trend is for policymaking options. Already, Krystal, I've seen some reports inside the Pentagon. They are drawing up plans for what a war of defense of Israel would look like, of what a U.S. military invasion would look like, what a U.S. military incursion against Lebanon, and then, of course, broader war plans with Iran have been sitting around inside the Pentagon for a long time. And this is what the drums of war sound like right now, when you can see all of this.
Not to mention, on the one hand, okay, Biden is going to try to deter Iran. But if you have the American president there standing next to Netanyahu, who has, by the way, completely lost the trust of his own people, but effectively backstopping him and his extraordinarily extreme government, as they are already committing what the UN and others are describing as war crimes, including this medieval siege, including the absolute bombing civilian infrastructure, including the forced relocation of 1 million people, evacuation of 1 million people from northern Gaza. You have the American president standing next to Netanyahu while all of this is happening. So as much as they may say, oh, we want the humanitarian corridor, we want to allow aid through, we're going to talk to Israel about all of this, The bottom line is they're never going to condition aid. They're not going to use any of the carrots and the sticks that they have at their disposal to try to make sure that the Palestinian people are protected and the rules of international engagement and war are followed. So that specter in and of itself is rather extraordinary in what I would say is a very bad way.
Yeah.
The other thing I would say about this New York Times report, which is all based on, what intel ghouls are saying, et cetera, I don't know why we have any confidence in them when apparently they didn't see any of this coming to start with. That's number one. So I wouldn't really put a lot of faith in their analysis of the situation at this point. And the other thing is they have this quote here that says, listen, this is from a former senior Pentagon official and CIA officer. He says, if Hamas looks like it will be destroyed, Hezbollah will have incredible pressure to get directly involved and open a northern front. The more civilians killed, the more outrage will come from people in the region. This will put more pressure on Hezbollah to join the fight or lose credibility. So if you have the American president, we've already had American Secretary of State there. If you have the American president there as well, if you have carrier strike groups in the region while this thing is escalating, you tell me what that's going to look like for us and for our involvement.
Exactly right.
Hey guys, if you like that video, go to breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber, and help us build the best independent media organization on the planet.
That's right. We're subscriber funded. We're building something new. We want to replace these failing mainstream media organizations.
So again, to subscribe, it's breakingpoints.com.